Good morning. First of all, thanks so much to the Camelot team for inviting me, and thank you all for being here and joining this morning. That was a fantastic event last night at Topgolf. Let's give the Camelot team and everybody a big round of applause for that. How many of you are challenged in keeping up with customer demands right now? Nobody. Oh, a couple. How many of you would like to take away a couple of nuggets from this presentation that'll help you reduce those challenges, satisfy more customers, and make more money? Anybody? Thank you. So I want to begin by sharing a little bit about me, my background, and just to validate why the Camelot team invited me to share a few thoughts with you today. For those of you who have good eyes, you can see I am not a millennial. I've actually started my career in the 80s, and the foundation of my career was at Pepsi. And at Pepsi, I developed software. I was a developer in those days, and on COBOL, Randy. And we developed software to track the sale and promotion of all the soda that Pepsi sold to their franchises. And even in the 80s, Pepsi was way ahead of the curve. When they merged with Frito-Lay, they were the first company that had handhelds. We were creating software in those days that provided route tracking, loading trucks in the order that they'd be dropping off their shipments. So way, way, way ahead of the curve, and it was truly the foundation of my career. T&T Express Worldwide, I was actually responsible for all of IT in the Americas, North and South America. And in that regard, implemented the very first barcode scanning in their airport hubs. Imagine shipping anything through, on a plane by paper. We're still handling paper in many 3PLs, but that's like a given these days. At Philips, and I'm just talking about the bottom, which is really prior to me forming my own company. That was a shift to outsourcing. That was really my first shift to understanding that, and this was in the 90s, that companies aren't going to be able to do everything they need to do internally, and they need to outsource. And in those days, actually, Philips was implementing SAP ERP systems at a fixed price, literally, Adam, locking up a project at a fixed price and then T's and C's along the way, any changes in managing those. But one of my core strengths is project management. And when I worked at Philips, I had, many in the room won't understand the complexity of Y2K. But at that time, companies were really worrying about whether or not their entire systems would shut down. And Philips had 31 different email platforms all running through one central hub that was not Y2K compliant. We had to move 150,000 users from 31 different email systems to Lotus Notes and SMTP, two standards. And I ran the project for North America, on time, on budget, great customer satisfaction. Even IBM considered it a best-of-breed project. I won't go through all of the companies in the industry, manufacturing, distribution, mostly 3PLs. Over a 15-year career, I've mostly served 3PLs, some of you in the room today. And some hired ATS because of our expertise in mobility and RF, some to support their selection of a new warehouse management system, some even for a new ERP system like Everlast and Mission. Some, Murphy folks in the room today were really seeking a warehouse management system, but saw in the potential of Camelot to do much more of that, to implement transportation and accounting, and in their case, to have a single version of the truth to manage the entire business. And when they're done migrating 300 customers, that's exactly where they'll be. So over the years, I've learned a great deal. I haven't just given, I've received tremendously from people in the room. And one thing I've learned is that every 3PL is different. And as I go to each warehouse within a 3PL is quite different, depending on the customer and the complexity of the products. And therefore, each of you truly have unique requirements. So this is what the presentation is really. The core of my presentation today is there is a tsunami of change affecting us. I think most people don't even realize it's subconscious how much all this change affects us, but it affects especially the people in this room every day, internally and keeping up with the demands of your customers. a good part of this presentation is based on the CSCMP 2017 State of Logistics report, because I was just blown away by how much was in there that was just relevant to share. So I'm not, sharing the entire document. Anybody wants a document, I can get you a copy. But look at this quote. Logistics is in the early stages of an evolutionary leap driven by technological change. Regardless of the size of your company, your current success, and the challenges you face today, there's a tsunami of change impacting every one of us. I had a breakfast meeting this week with a networking group. We had the chief economist from Jones Lang LaSalle presenting, and he said the only thing constant is change is happening faster and faster every day. So it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. That's what Charles Darwin said. And I encourage you to think about that as you look how you want to move your companies forward in the next few years. So we're going to talk a little bit about this tsunami of change from the perspective of a booming economy, e-commerce, customer expectations, and technology. Hopefully I'll give you a little bit of a roadmap to how to move forward through this, and we'll certainly take some time for questions. I'd like to have this be an engaging conversation. So if anybody has a question, raise their hand. If I want to just pause a second, please allow me to do that, but I'd rather take questions rather than wait to the end. I've been downloading this graphic over a few years. Take a quick look. If you want to see the details, look at the presentation, because there's no time to waste. I'll go back if anybody wants to see it, but I love that line. And I have been downloading it, and it's a profound graphic, an internet minute. So there really is no time to waste. We get paralyzed by not knowing what changes to make, or, should I do this, should I do that? And it's not to rush, but to think, and not to be a deer in headlights not moving forward. So it was the best of times, it was worst of times. Who knows where that's from? Absolutely. Absolutely. So why did I choose that line? Because in all of this, there are opportunities and there are challenges. The opportunities, we have a booming economy, but there's significant challenges right now because of the trade wars and the tariffs and increasing prices. The president implemented tremendous tax incentives that, for all the businesses in this room, it's a great opportunity to invest and recoup your investments, smart investments, but there's also a shortage of capacity that's driving prices upward and upward and upward. There's e-commerce growth, which is driving business, but increased costs for space and freight, which is also hurting business. There's increased demand for logistics everywhere you look, but labor shortages, and especially in this industry, are going to continue to be a significant impact in the next few years. Drivers, not just drivers and warehouse people, even in the people in this room, as this economist shared the other day, in this booming economy, people have more choice. And you need to invest in your employees, your good employees, if you want them to remain. I was just sharing with Randy at breakfast about how impressed I am with the Camelot team, because that's exactly what they've done. They've maintained, they've kept a great team, and they continue to build upon it. So is technology an enabler? Is technology a disruptor? It's obviously both. Many disruptions to technology, and ELD has actually hurt a lot of the logistics companies in terms of their ability to hire drivers and maintain drivers. So this is a very profound quote. If you take away one nugget from today, this quote, and I don't know how many, anybody know Wayne Dyer, who he is? Anybody? Great writer. He's been on PBS multiple times. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. We make assumptions all the time based on what we believe, what we see, and what we're focused on. And when you shift, and just shift a little bit, you see things totally differently. This is even true in quantum physics. I'm not a physicist, I'm not going to go into it, but even in quantum physics, if scientists look at something, it responds differently than when they don't. So why invest in technology now? There are immediate depreciation benefits on associated costs of purchase and implementation. There's an ability, if it's done correctly, to minimize current and future labor costs. There's ability, if done correctly, to minimize tariffs. And I don't know what the exit strategy is for some of the companies here, many are family-owned businesses, but it makes the company more attractive for sure for sales down the road. On top of that, JLL has shared that warehouse rates have almost doubled. So the cost for new warehouse space and the potential for that, as opposed to the Great Recession, has gone 180 degrees opposite. What ATS does is help companies become the beneficiaries of technology rather than the victims of it, to take advantage of the opportunities rather than fall victim to the challenges. So this actually graphic I got from I for Transport, EFT. They do a lot of work in the 3PL industry. And I thought this was a really interesting graphic. What is the biggest challenge you're currently facing in the logistics industry? And you can see number one is digital transformation. And this was a really powerful quote. I don't know how it affects each of you, but digital transformation is more than just bringing in some systems. It's a wholesale transformation of technology, process, and people. If you just purchase Excalibur or Camelot, it has some value. If you really learn to leverage it and empower your people to use it, where you're taking advantage of the operational benefits, the potential to provide better value for your customers, then you start looking at how do I use technology to change processes, motivate my staff, and provide better services to my customers. All right, I want to stop. I wanted to poll the room for a minute. We have digital transportation. Just a couple of questions. What are your challenges? I'm curious. What are the top challenges for the people here? Anyone? Labor. I get a lot of nods on that. Absolutely. Anyone else? That it?
To performance.
Sorry?
KPI.
Oh, okay. KPIs, absolutely. I overheard a little bit of that conversation, earlier. I've been focused on KPIs for many, many years. And I always look at it beginning from the eye of the customer, and how does the customer, what are their expectations? Some are legitimate, some may not be legitimate. As Jeff was talking about, if somebody sends in an order at 4:30, is it legitimate to expect that order to be processed? Probably not. But this is all about SLAs and the service level agreements you have with your customers. I deal with 3PLs that get orders at 4 p.m. and have made agreements that they must ship them that day. So it always comes back to, and I think some maybe you get from Camelot, and maybe you have to develop some of your own, just based on what you're doing and what your customers require. But visibility, absolutely. What about this all the way to the right? Price increases, fuel, changing customers' mindsets to modernizing, and any of that cost affecting anyone? Not so much. Okay. We certainly have smarter online customers. As you can see here, they're using better, faster, and all mobile options available to them. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 2017 U.S. total retail sales was $51 trillion, of which $448 billion is e-commerce. That's 15% year-on-year growth for e-commerce versus 4.9% for retail. And I'll share that those e-commerce statistics are valued because many people that shop retail are doing most of their research online beforehand. So it doesn't honestly reflect all of the impact of e-commerce. So what are some disruptors? Obviously Amazon, Uber, people perceive robotics as disruption, drones, AI, Internet of Things. We continue to create new, powerful technologies that will drastically impact every person and every industry that exists today, as well as create brand new industries and markets in the future. I heard an anonymous quote many years ago. It had a profound impact on me. and people that know me know this is true, that customer service is core to my DNA. I've used that line for a long time, but I heard something even more powerful recently. At the CSCMP conference, I got to hear VP of Logistics from Amazon. Talked about Amazon has 14 leadership principles. Number 1, customer obsession. Think of that word. Customer obsession. They get up every day like it's day one, ready to go to battle for their customers. Nobody owns a customer. Nobody owns a market. Somebody could always take it away from you. I know competition is a big challenge in the 3PL industry today. Focus on your customers. This is a 10-year innovation outlook that came from the 2017 CSCMP report. Obviously, the next generation supply chain will improve fulfillment and drive efficiencies via big data, predictive analysis, AI, robotics, crowdsourcing, and electronic and autonomous vehicles. I don't think, some of these are really on the radar. I heard Randy say yesterday about blockchain. I don't see blockchain to be, for a 3PL perspective, certainly in the next year or two, but this has profound impact in terms of the savings of paper and efficiency, and I'll talk a little bit about in a few minutes. But I love this quote this is from Mayor de Blasio in New York City, who just implemented a Freight New York City plan to change the dynamics because everything's still based on trucking, and you can't serve Amazon Prime delivery expectations when everybody's stuck in traffic. So you have to come up with a new model that's going to work. So this is his vision: a fully digital, connected, and flexible supply chain optimized for e-commerce and last mile same-day delivery will become essential. Not a nice to have, essential. So this is where things are going. Robots. I think this is in a very near future for 3PLs. If maybe some of you are ready. Anybody looking at it today? 1, 2, 3, 4. They're here, there, and everywhere. I was driving into a customer in Pennsylvania a couple of weeks ago, and I get off the exit, and I'm watching a highway maintenance worker, or mowing the lawn, but it's on a hill, and he's not driving anything. He's sitting there with a robot, a remote control robot, watching this thing go up and down, mowing. I'm going, they're already everywhere. We're not even paying attention how much they've infiltrated. But worldwide sales of robots are going to be $22.4 billion. These are the projections. $22.4 billion by 2021, shipping over 600,000 units a year. You see a few that are listed here, but there are others that I think that may be more relevant to 3PL. Companies like Locust, Six Rivers, Gray Orange, they were certainly out at CSCMP, and they have different models. Some are purchase, some are software as a service. And they do different functions. But one thing, going back to the labor question, there's a concern about robots replacing workers. And I don't see that. I think it's actually an opportunity. It's interaction with warehouse workers. And in terms of the challenges of hiring younger people who have options to do other things than work in a warehouse or in logistics, it could be an attraction rather than repel. So I see it as an opportunity to attract young labor when it's done correctly and implemented correctly. People, process, technology. AI, artificial intelligence. We hear about it a lot. I think the way we'll envision it or realize it is more in the products we purchase. There'll be other software that has artificial intelligence in it that will then create more benefits in terms of supply chain visibility and things like that down the road. But right now, what's very interesting to me, and it's changing because of the speed of change, are wearables. We started talking a little bit about that yesterday. Anybody using voice today? Nobody in this room. I hear mixed things about voice, but voice command tools can certainly increase pick efficiency by as much as 30%, and we're not going to be as limited to Vocalect and some of that software anymore. It's going to be built into the devices. And certainly for peak demands, in an e-commerce world, it has value, certainly in picking and being able to scale up with minimized training, especially because it takes away the language barrier. And therefore, you could hire temporary staff and they could function. There's increased use of smart glasses. I could see that actually becoming more valuable. What I don't like, though, is Amazon's use of patented wristbands to track worker movement. I mean, to me, that's technology, but I just don't like that. That's almost the way they used to track UPS drivers, that if they went to the bathroom more than 2 minutes, and then you're not efficient. But mobile technology, we were talking yesterday, I think it's not about one mobile device for your warehouse. It's about function. What do we need at receiving? What do we need if we're picking pallets versus picking cases? And if we're not picking cases, but we're mostly picking eaches, then that's something totally different. And maybe ring scanners, as Randy was saying, and other devices, may have more value. But these continue to evolve, and they're getting better and better and better. Keith just bought a traditional handheld RF device, but now just the scanning engines are so much more powerful. You can scan a UPC code and a barcode 3 rolls, 4 rolls high, or signage 5 rolls high, or signage hung from a bulk area, and be able to scan that with a single device, as opposed to, I need this device for long range and this device for short range. I don't focus as much on freight, but certainly Uberization of freight is an issue. Is anybody involved or impacted by Flexport and that today in their trucking, their brokerage? Anybody? Not here. Okay. Blockchain. Global spending will double to $2.1 billion this year. Transparency Market Research predicts this will result in a $32.9 billion global supply chain software business by 2026. That was from Forbes. A great example of what's going on right now is TradeLens, the Maersk IBM blockchain application, which has grown to 92 participants already because of its ability to help shippers eliminate up to 5 middlemen, even for simple queries, such as identifying the location of a shipping container. But for most of us, 3PL perspective, blockchain's, a little far out, 3 to 5 years before I really see it really having the potential to impact you and your customers the way we would like it to. But what is all this technology and what does all this mean to you? It's a paradigm shift of how customers are ordering, shipping, and returning. I forgot who I had the conversation with. I think it was you yesterday about returns, about, with all the e-commerce, what about returns? Yeah, what about returns? How do we manage that? How do we handle that? Whatever the numbers are that's going to come up with Black Thursday through Black Monday, guess what percentage of those products are coming back? A real high percentage, 30% or higher are coming back. So you've already invested. I want to talk through this slide a little bit. So to me, this requires new thinking in terms of business and strategic planning, insourcing versus outsourcing. Anybody ever hear of Geoffrey Moore, who wrote the book Crossing the Chasm many years ago? Great book. Adam, you should read it. It's a technology. It's really about how companies absorb technology. So he talked about recently systems of record, systems of engagement, systems of intelligence. I love the way he referred to this. So what are systems of record? Everybody in this room has bought a system of record. That's Camelot. Accounting, customer inventory, transportation, management. If you don't have a solid foundation of your systems of record, you cannot build. That's your foundation to build upon. Then there's systems of engagement, web, Twitter. How do you communicate? Not just those, but how do you communicate and integrate with your customers, internally and externally? That's where we kind of are now, and companies are somewhere in that phase. But systems of intelligence are where things are going, with robotics and AI and Internet of Things and blockchain. And if you don't have those other elements, it's going to be more challenging not from a software purchase perspective, but from how are we running our company perspective. So how do you leverage automation? How do you best leverage it? Lots of choices: accounting, ERP, sales and marketing. I don't have to read it, you can see it. But in my opinion, the way to move forward and leverage automation is with a correct balance and sequencing of business strategy and planning, innovation, quality, efficiency, profitability, and most important, people. We're driven, and we're not going to change. You look at reverse logistics, it's driven by people. Pick, pack, e-commerce, still driven by people. So, I ran a 7x24 operation for Mutual New York. It was the hardest thing I ever did. Don't ever take on a 7x24 operation. It's no sleep, and there's always something going on. Despite what you think there's always something going on, at least you can sleep sometimes, unless you're really responsible and you're running, 3 shifts, 7 days a week. But when I ran a 7x24 operation, I could schedule, I could execute, I could do everything. But if the person who delivered the reports didn't get to the customer on time, my customer wasn't happy and I failed. So I go, you know what, I'm only as strong as my weakest link. And that was really profound to me in terms of how to really manage a 7x24. Many years ago, I wanted to take my son into New York City to see Jurassic Park at a great movie theater. And that's when Fandango first came out. We can dial on the phone and get your tickets, and I thought it was phenomenal. Dial on the phone, where do you want to go, what do you want to see? Super. Drive to Manhattan, get there early, all ready to rock. The printer didn't work. I couldn't get my tickets. And rather than being like one of the first people in, I was like the last person in. The printer could be the weakest link that impacts your ability to, serve a customer and get it done on time. But this slide, and people minimize it, going forward, it's data. And it's data that is driving success for Amazon, and also in technologies like Internet of Things, AI, and blockchain. But data ultimately will remain the weakest link in the supply chain until all of us and our customers improve the way we share information electronically instead of by phone, fax, email, Excel. That's not what blockchain, is about. So, and I just want to share one other thing about EDI. It's really important. Just because it's electronic doesn't mean it's accurate. And as you're hopefully working with the Camelot team on your EDI connections with your customers, it's profound to me that what we assume and what really is reality. I had a conversation, there was discussion yesterday about EDI and sending either an 856 or a 943. Is it a 943 for inbound? Yes. And then getting a 944 in return. So I have a customer, and they're dealing with their customer, trying to set up EDI, and listen to this logic. We're sending you here's what's coming. You're going to have 200 containers, and what's the EDI? What do we send back to? What we received, right? Here's what we received versus what you told us was coming. Oh, we don't care. No, we just assume we're taking it. Once we send it to you, we assume that's accurate. We take it off our system now. What? We send you back. You don't do anything in 944? No, we just figure if there's any imbalances, that customer service will talk to customer service and we'll get it sorted out. No. That's not the way we want to start this off. That's not the best solution here. We send you back a 944, what's received, then we can have a dialogue of what went on, what you sent to us versus what we received, and how we can resolve it. Don't minimize. Your weakest link might be your assumptions of what your customer needs or your assumptions of what your customer has of you. So, I want to do a quick exercise because I know I'm a great presenter, but you don't want to listen to me for an hour. So, e-commerce 101. Orders are created in a shopping cart, dropped into warehouse management, we get a pick ticket, they're picked from inventory, package, send a little shipment notification, we get it out of the warehouse, and then we deliver it. What's the big deal? There's no big deal. Why isn't everybody doing it? Well, how do you process orders? I mean, went through this a little bit yesterday. And, I don't need to repeat the value of Dropstream, but what I will say is, however you're taking orders in today, you consider what other ways you can or what other ways your customers are going to be asking you, whether that's EDI, XML, APIs, or through specialized middleware like Dropstream. So why, we talked about it. I could set up a connection to Shopify. I could set up a connection to Magento. I could set up a connection to Ecommerce. Sure, anybody can. But how do you maintain all the constant change? And that's what you don't want to do. You have a busy enough life. You don't need to, next time Shopify makes a change, you got to make changes in all these customer interfaces. And that's the advantage of a product like that. Same thing on the fulfillment side. And I see multiple ways of 3PLs handling fulfillment. But many of them are, I would say, semi-automated and still too manual. So where are your opportunities and efficiencies, whether it's internal operations, rate shopping, electronic integration, tracking of shipments, and what software and hardware maximize efficiencies and profits? Pick, pack, and shipping stations, printers, scanners, material handling systems. There's no one way, and even no one way in your 3PL if you have multiple warehouses, because each warehouse is designed different and you may have to do it differently based on what your mix is and what your facility looks like. So managing change. In this tsunami of change, how do you manage change? And what's the best option for your customers and your company? How do you decide? I would say it's not an easy journey, and the bigger the decision you're making, the more treacherous it could be. There are companies that were on other warehouse management systems before they went to Camelot. Making a bad choice today is not just costly, it could be catastrophic to your company based on the impact to your customers, the impact to your employees, who you're trying to maintain and keep happy and less stressed. So it's important to make good decisions. Not to not make a decision or have to wait to make the perfect decision, but to make smart decisions. And to do that, I encourage you to not always think of professional services as an expense, but as an investment. This is where Camelot, other trusted advisors could be very valuable to you in giving you thoughts and suggestions that you just may not have thought of. So, to me, I look at this, you can look at this in any way. You can look at it from project management, the most successful projects and those that fail. Believe it or not, most high-level enterprise resource planning, warehouse management system projects fail. And when they fail, it's because one of these 5 things weren't done to the level or magnitude that they should have. Either not having executive buy-in, a cross-functional team, love the internal communications, getting everybody's input as opposed to just, here's what we need to do, and then try and back into that. So how do you define failure? How do you define success? How do your customers define success? For ATS, it's implementing projects on time, on budget, and with great customer satisfaction. You and your customers. This EDI scenario I just gave you before with this mismatch of what comes, well, that customer just came back and said that was the most successful EDI implementation that they ever had. And for my customer who's a 3PL, they had lost this account. So to get that account back and to have that be the statement, imagine how huge that is for them, as well as the customer who's now onboarding, and to have that be their initial reaction. So one more thing, I did want to do another exercise. We're not going to have time today. I'll ask you to do that. But what I'll do is share this, and maybe we could just have a question or two to close. I'm a collaborative person, and I've always felt, and especially today, no one person can do this. And whether it's you're struggling with, at this moment, you purchased Camelot, and you're somewhere in the middle of a migration, you're moving from one platform to another, maybe that's some of your challenges, and you're trying to figure out how to move forward. But I'll take it more from the sales perspective. I didn't know if that's where you were going. Miguel, with your comment. But from a sales perspective, I just want you to think of this, from an RFP perspective, when you're looking for new business, but not only that, and that's kind of, from a lot of the research, the majority of your growth is going to come from current customers, your current customers and their growth in their own business or taking on more business. So when you look at that, how are you using a cross-functional team? Is this, here's our price, which is based on racking and labor, and not really taking advantage, taking account for all the hardware, the software, the process changes that need to take place? Or what about in technology? Is it EDI? Is there data transfer? Are we going to do this manually? Are there modifications that need to be made? Customized reporting, packing lists, bills of lading, activity reports. These are things that don't always turn up in the RFP, and then a price is given, and now you have to back into that price to try and satisfy a customer and make money. And so I ask you to consider, after this presentation as one of the nuggets, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, what can you do differently, and what can you bring home to perhaps, I love the point, change the communications, change the upfront communications so that your end results are much better. So I think I'll ask for one or two questions, and then thank you very much. Anybody have a question? Thank you. Oh, one.
I'm sorry. Do you travel on site to different 3PL warehouses and kind of come in, evaluate where we're at, and offer advice?
But always in a collaborative perspective, right? It's looking at it through your eyes and how to help you generate more success by working with your customers, your partners, etc. I mean, would you say that's how we really work well together? Because I understand, because of my background, what the technology and software companies are seeking, how they think, but because I've been in your shoes, in your environments, I understand what you need and how you think. So that is my sweet spot. Thank you for asking that. Any other comments or questions? Thank you so much for today. I really greatly appreciate it.